All right, so this particular material, as I said earlier, this is Polymer Clay. The brand, again, is Sculpty, but they have other brands. You can get it at Hobby Lobby. I think Walmart even sells it. So what I want y'all to do to kind of get this is sort of break it up. You can see you can peel it off in little sections if you want, say if you're not wanting to use all that at once. But this stuff is it's oven baked, so it's got a way different consistency than, say, water-based clay, like real clay that you would do on like a throwing wheel and things like that. But the way you activate this instead of applying water is you heat it up by manipulating it like I am right now. And the heat of your hand is what kind of makes it pliable. So you just kind of have to, I want you to kind of work it a little bit, try to get it pliable. This might take a little bit of time. And maybe it might be easier to not use for what we're doing today. We may not need the full dill that I passed out to you. You might be able just to use half of it. What I'm going to show you is really just, it's going to be like a pinch pot, which is like Pottery 101, like just a really simple basics. And then I'll show you a couple different types of pinch pots, and I'll show you also how to, there's a coil pot. We're not going to spend a lot of time doing coil pots, but there's a technique doing those that you might need to know for another piece that you will do for your project. So anyway, just kind of warm it up, work it around. That's probably, I probably need a little bit more in my hand than that for what I'm wanting to show you today. If I have time, I'm going to also show you, you guys might have seen these little guys in my closet. I made these for fun out of Sculpty in college. They're just, I was learning how to do faces in a sculpting class, and I was just playing around with these, but you can't really see. Okay, maybe I do need those lights off. I don't know. But those are super easy and fun to make. They remind me of the Easter Isle heads. I didn't do them like that on purpose, but when I got done with them, I was like, oh, kind of remind me of those guys. And one thing about sculpting is after you sculpt stuff, you tend to understand form way better, especially when you're drawing. Like it crisscrosses over. Like after I had to sculpt my face in college, which is back there on the top shelf. If you haven't seen it yet, there's a bust of me. I understood my facial structure a lot better, you know, and I understood how to draw hair after I learned how to sculpt hair and all that kind of stuff. So anyways, I think this is probably a good amount as to what I'm going to do to show a pinch pot. So after you get that kind of pliable, go ahead and kind of roll it into a ball. And you guys might have done stuff like this when you were a kid with Play-Doh. I'm going to try to work out like any little creases and stuff. It doesn't have to be perfect. I'm just showing you the technique, but this is going to, nails, going to really not be fun doing this technique with nails. It's just going to get under there. And really, just, if you do have long nails and you're not spending a bunch of money, keep it up and with them. You might just trim them off during this unit. But okay, so once you get a pretty good ball, what you're going to do is a pinch pot. You're just basically, you're going to shove your thumb down the middle of the sphere you made to kind of, that's going to help kind of create a opening for where our bowl essentially will be. And then just like it sounded, you're just going to slowly pinch it around. Brandy, will you go ahead and turn that light off? With this being white, I don't think it's picking it up as well. The other one, the one by itself. Let's see, let that kind of adjust. Camera will pick up. Okay. That might be too dark. Is that any better? Worse saying? That's kind of about the same. But you can kind of see, I guess, better with the shadow. Brandon, I'm going to probably have you go back and turn that back on because that made it too dark. Or actually turn on the middle light for me. That might just give me the right amount of light. There we go. You can kind of see that a little bit better. Thank you. So again, if you're doing pottery, in a sense, is what we're doing right now. The goal with pottery, if you're doing it with your hand or if you're doing it on a potter's wheel, is to make all the walls of your bowl or dish or whatever you're making the same thickness. And the thinner it is, the higher, like the better skill it takes, I suppose, to get that. Which when you're pinching, it's going to be darn near like impossible to get it super even. But again, this is basic technique that they used, a long time ago when they didn't have stuff and they needed a bowl. So it's a very kind of archaic style of making pottery, but you eventually would want to kind of flatten out the bottom so it would, be stable. Again, the bottom is kind of where it's harder to get it to be even and the same thickness as the walls. But you can widen that out. Instead of making a bowl, you can make a dish. You can make a vase, make it more narrow. But it might be harder to do like a vase or a cylinder. But that is essentially a pinch pot technique, okay? So now I'm going to show you one more pinch pot. So we're not, all the stuff we're doing today, I hope you're okay with it getting destroyed because that's the point of the lesson. You can always make one of these again. So after you get kind of an idea of that first pinch pot, just sort of wad it back up, okay? Make it into another ball. On this next pinch pot, the same techniques essentially, but we're going to make, instead of just one opening, we're going to make 2 or 3. I'll let you decide if you want to make 2 openings or 3. But say you have a lot of jewelry dishes will have like a divider, like your rings go over here and your earrings go over here, So essentially we're going to make dividers in this pinch pot. So I'm going to do a 3 pinch pot, I think. So I'm going to start with 3 impressions. And I need to start that over because I flattened out my back. Let me try it again. And it's actually, this may not be enough clay to do the 3. You might need a little bit more. Funny story, I actually have taught this particular lesson before, but it was in college during one of my education classes to a group of college kids. I just remembered that I did that. Okay, let's see. I bought them Play-Doh. Yeah. They had fun. I had big football players in there that were like, oh, this is a fun project. This is different, All right, so I went ahead and tried the 3 again, so I'm just going to kind of, this probably is not enough clay. No, I don't think that's enough clay for 3. But you can kind of see how you can develop that into a bigger dish if you had more. I'm going to go back and do it 2, though. But any questions so far on this? It's pretty, I feel like, self-explanatory. And you have the ability to manipulate it, one way or another. That's a really bad part. See, I made mine too wide. But I could come back in here. And you can always add more clay if you need to. Just because you start with a certain amount doesn't mean I can't come over here, grab some, warm it up, and add to it. But you can also see the pain of having nails. No, you can't. But yeah, you can kind of sort of. Well, it's going to be a constant battle with my nails doing a technique with this. But okay, so that's the pinch technique. Okay. All right, so that went pretty fast. So I'm going to go ahead and show you how to kind of, if you were to do a figure. No, I'm not. I got to do one more before I do this. All right, so the coil pot technique is essentially, we all used to make the little snakes with our Play-Doh, right? Like make a big old roll and thin it out. So I'm going to do this and kind of make a big long roll. And we might have to do more than, usually when you're doing a coil pot, you have to do several of these. If you're doing like a true like coil pot with clay, there in a clay studio you have like certain tools where you could just shove a bunch of clay into a tool and squeeze out like the coils. You know what I mean? I mean they have that for Play-Doh too. So. Now, one thing I don't have out for you guys today because I didn't want us to waste this material because I don't have a bunch of it. I have Sculpty Glue, essentially. In a true clay class, you would have what you would call slip. Slip is basically watered down clay, but it's like a thick consistency of watered down clay. So that Sculpty Glue, which I'll pull out, when we actually start doing a project, it can help glue, like maybe you have to do several different little pieces and attach them. You would kind of do this technique that I'm going to show you, but you're going to add that glue to it, it acts as a binder. So, all right, so let's say I might make my coil I'm going to make a few more strips of coils about the same length. Because we're not going to make a full pot. I'm just going to show you, again, how to kind of apply these techniques in case you need them into a sculpture. And when we do a sculpture, I'm going to probably be pretty, loose on what y'all want to do. Like, I'm not going to say you have to do an animal or you have to do a plant or, you could probably do pottery. I'm going to let y'all decide your subject matter. Because, again, this is my first time to do this. I don't know what works and what won't work, but we're gonna try and see how it goes. All right, so these are about the same length. You can't really see. Let me see. I do have one that's slightly longer than the other. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my handy-dandy little tool. I'm just going to kind of cut that off and make it the same length. Okay? I'm going to do one more, just for good measure. There really is a lot of people that do different colors of this. Once you bake it, you can paint it. But some people will just go buy all the colors they want, and they'll layer these colors into it and then roll it up like this. And it'll make a flower design, and then they cut off all these little flowers and make them into beads for a necklace. I mean, it's really neat how some people take this craft and make some really beautiful jewelry with it. And this is more than just jewelry, but that's just kind of I know that's popular right now. You also want to try to make sure your coils are all about the same thickness. I did not say that earlier. This one's way longer. I got this one way longer than that one. All right, doing surgery. All right, so does everybody have at least 3? No? Okay. I'm fast, sorry. And honestly, if you just have 2, 2 would be fine too. Because what I'm going to show you is not like, again, we're not making anything super big today. Okay, is everybody have at least 2? Okay. You still working on your second one? Okay. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and show you, Brandy, and you can kind of just apply it when you get a chance. So if we were doing a coil pot, again, we'd have a lot more of these coils to use. We would start like our base, whatever size we're going to be. Okay. Now when you have to like add pieces or attach pieces, so if I just stuck it like here, I could kind of smash it a little bit, but that still is not as good as like trying to add that slip and create surface for it to grab onto. So it will stick to each other, but again, it's just not that great. So what we do as to kind of bind them better together is we're going to take one of these tools and we're going to score it. This is a technique called scoring. So I'm going to kind of take this and I'm going to kind of just rough up the ends of both of them, which this is more applicable to water-based clay, because we won't get just a ton of surface. But this will help. This is when, after we rough it up, we apply that slip, or as I have the Sculpty Glue, we would apply that to this too, because having a rougher bottom and then adding that adhesive in there and it gets into those crevices is just going to create a better bind. Does that make sense? I don't have that stuff out, so let's pretend that we added that. And we're going to smush it together, and even try, after we smush it, we want to kind of blend our seam. Okay? So anytime you add anything to your sculpture, you want to try to hide the seam unless that seam is meant to be seen. Say if I was adding, like doing a little, I don't know, a fairy look, and I had a little mushroom the fairy was sitting on, and I wanted to add all these little extra pebbles to it. So I obviously don't want to blend those pebbles in, because we want them to look like actual pebbles. Does that make sense? So, okay. So even if you can, like, try to blend the seam on the bottom, just because it will hold it better together. Okay? Let me zoom back out a little bit. So if we were going to continue doing this, especially with water-based clay, when I add my next ring, I'm going to score the whole top where it's going to attach. And this does not need to be pretty by any means. It's going to get covered up. We just need a rough surface. We would do that on the top, and then I would also do it. Can y'all see that okay? So it's not super deep. I need it rougher. So if I add that adhesive, it's got more to grab onto. And then I'm going to do the same thing to the piece I'm adding on top. And where I cut it, that's going to be the side I stick down on this. Okay? So next year, if any of y'all take pre-AP, I'm sure you saw the little heads that they were working on. It was not a true water-based clay, but it was one that was very similar called boneware, and it acts just like water-based clay. So other than having to fire it, it was pretty much the same. Oh, we didn't glaze it, but because it was after it dried, you could paint it. Okay, so when I added my second coil, And this will happen sometimes. This piece is, between manipulating them, it got a little lot longer, so I'm just going to kind of cut off that extra. And then, you know, score the bottom where it's going to attach. And stick it together. So this is another technique that they would use, you know, more or less in those primitive times. And because this would be a better technique to use for like a vase, which you would want to start with a base of clay. Like I'd have probably a circular vase here for the bottom, and then I would build up. But you would kind of do a similar technique, just like this, and you would continue to build. Now, if you wanted to keep the coil look, you wouldn't want to blend the sides. You would want to leave those like that, but you would want to probably come on the inside. And again, nail's not the best friend, but we do have these nice handy-dandy tools. So you would want to kind of fix the seam on the inside because that would just give it more stability. Plus, depending on what you would carry in a piece of pot like this, you probably wouldn't want a bunch of stuff getting stuck in those crevices if you were, you know, using it for practical purposes. So, any questions thus far? I'm going to take a look around really quick and just come and check, and then after I do that, we'll probably destroy. I'm not going to even worry about adding that third coil right now. If you guys have time while I'm walking around, go for it. But I'm going to take a look around, and then just we'll destroy this, and I think we've got time to do maybe a quick little head. Yeah, it gets a little tricky trying to get those same sizes. All right. Now, if I'm about to break your heart telling you to destroy this, I'm sorry. You can always, you know, make you an actual coil pot for your project if you want. So. But I think we got just enough time to do a little head. So grab all that clay that you've already warmed up today. Now I'm really rusty on this one. Like pinch pots and coil pots aren't hard to redo if you haven't done them for a long time. I'm going to have to I think I'll be fine now on these heads. So anyways, balling it back up, smoothing it back out. Now I won't leave this as a perfect little sphere. I'm going to kind of mold it probably to the shape of the head I want. Now, like this one, he's a little bit more longer. He's got, you know, a more skinny jaw. So I kind of molded him because I wanted him to have a more elongated face. He's just more round, but he's got a pointier chin. And he's just a nice big plump fella. When I did him, I was thinking of Buddha. Somebody drew eyeballs on him. But I was thinking of, like, the Buddha sculpture when I did him, and that's kind of what I was going for. And I honestly feel like after doing those, again, I had a better understanding of, like, shadows when I was drawing faces because you're creating the form. You know what I mean? So, anyways, I've got my like, ball here, and I'm going to kind of pinch the bottom to kind of create where the chin would be. And I can always kind of redo this shape as I go, you know. But if you recall, when I taught y'all how to do faces and facial proportions, y'all recall that? We kind of would do like, we did that line down the middle, and then we did like, here's our eye level, here's our nose level, here's our mouth level. Kind of take that tool and maybe my proportions on these guys are nowhere correct. Like if I was doing him like a real person, he'd have more head up on the top because those eyes are supposed to be directly in the middle of your head. Because then we have our forehead and our hair. People forget that. But I would just kind of say, okay, this is maybe where I want my eye line to be. I'm going to, you know, keep in mind where the jaw is. This might be, you know, where my bottom of my nose is, maybe where my mouth line is. So just kind of having, can you see that? I just kind of made like little impressions just as a guide. It can change. It's not a big deal. But what I always kind of start with, and this is where these tools come in a little bit more handy, because we're working smaller here. So I would kind of take, you know, this, and I kind of press it in to create like an eye socket. And then I'd come over here and create another eye socket, leaving the bridge of the nose kind of up. And again, your head is going to kind of morph while you're holding it and pressing it, and that's okay. We'll be able to go back and kind of refix it later. So I'm going to kind of do that, and then I'm going to also, am I moving too fast, y'all? Okay, can y'all see it okay? Do we need to turn the other light off? Okay, I'm going to come down here below where I want my nose to be, and I'm going to also sort of do an impression down here, because we have that like slope between our mouth and our nose. And then I'm going to kind of sort of mold that into an upper lip very roughly, and then I'm going to kind of come down here where I kind of put my mouth line and create a crease of my mouth. I need a bottom lip. I don't really have a bottom lip. Honestly, most of my mouths, this guy, I wanted him to have like perched lips a little, so I did kind of like make this more, I think I added clay to get that to look right. But this guy, I think I just kind of moved this down and just kind of sculpted in a line here. And I kind of think I did that for this guy too. Let's see. And honestly, from there, I just kind of keep going until I get a little face that I find is humorous and fun. I do have, I don't know actually if I do have smaller tools. I have actual clay sculpt tools somewhere. I thought I had one up here where I could go in, or let me just take a pencil and come in here and I can like make his nostril, you know. You'll get a little bit of graphite on your clay, but it's not going to hurt it. And then I can kind of blend out. Does that make sense? And then you can make more, you can pinch around, move clay around, add, you know, more prominent cheekbones if you want, a more prominent chin. Maybe he's got like a Jay Leno chin, if y'all even know who that is. You can, if I were to add, if I was doing this like as a sculpture that has actual eyes, I would add the eyes as a separate thing. So you would sculpt in the eye socket first, and then you would like create the eyes on a separate piece of clay and apply it. And you would apply the eyelids on top of that. I mean, in most cases, you might be able to sculpt those in. It just kind of depends on the process you take. So, my guy, I think I gave him like an overbite. Kind of funny. Like that. And kind of push out a bottom lip more if I want. There we go. By changing the shape of the eyebrow, or the brow bone, you can kind of create like expressions. So I kind of pushed down. Can you see that? I kind of shoved his eyebrows down a little in the middle, kind of make him look kind of like, I don't know, more sad looking, I suppose. Or like confused. That might be a better confused expression. So you can build out your nose by adding more clay or whatever. Those are just the basics. And by no means do you have to do a face for your project. I just thought these guys are kind of fun to make. And if you ever want to sculpt a face later, like next year we're going to you'll probably be doing like those creature designs. You'll kind of have a better understanding of your facial structure. So, all right, questions? You have a couple minutes to kind of keep messing around with these, and then it is time to clean up. So.